Caitlin Clark's first game in the European League was like dropping a firecracker in a room full of basketball fans. Everyone knew this day was coming, but no one quite expected it to unfold like this. The buzz had been building for months. Clark's move to the European League wasn't just about a star athlete joining a new team. It was about the intersection of raw talent with uncharted territory. In both Europe and back in the States, fans have been holding their breath for her debut, but the excitement hit a whole new level once she stepped onto the court. But before we proceed further, don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe. From the moment Clark emerged for warm-ups, there was an unmistakable electricity in the air. It was the kind of energy that travels in waves, passing through crowds, making its way from row to row, and finally exploding into cheers as she took her first practice shot. The die-hard basketball followers who had spent years watching the European League evolve were now seeing something completely different in Caitlin. There she was, bouncing the ball with a casual confidence, throwing playful no-look passes to her teammates as if to say, "Relax, I've got this." And judging by the crowd's roaring approval, they were more than happy to let her take the reins. Clark's European debut wasn't your standard start. It wasn't a cautious, feel-out-the-new-league sort of affair. From the jump, she was relentless. She showed no hesitation in asserting herself, launching three-pointers, and driving straight to the basket with an intensity that caught her opponents off guard. There was no easing in or finding her rhythm. It was all gas, no brakes. It wasn't long before the fans began chanting her name, a chant that started shyly but grew louder with every basket she sank. The arena, which had only moments ago been a bubbling cauldron of anticipation, was now in full-blown celebration mode. Her first few possessions were enough to send shockwaves not only through the arena but also through the sports world. Commentators back in the States, who had risen early or stayed up late to watch the stream, couldn't help but react in awe. WNBA analysts took to social media, blowing up timelines with reactions like, "Are you seeing this?" and "Someone check her passport." The game was being watched by many WNBA fans who had heard the legends of Caitlin Clark's ferocity, but weren't quite sure how she'd measure up in Europe. Clark's performance didn't leave them guessing for long. She was here to make a statement, and everyone watching understood it immediately. What caught everyone off guard wasn't just Clark's offensive firepower, but her undeniable knack for controlling the game. When she wasn't raining down three-pointers, she was dishing out passes that made defenders question their eyesight. One sequence had her faking a drive to the hoop, then pulling back for a pass that zipped between two defenders into the hands of a teammate for an easy layup. The crowd collectively inhaled in shock, and some could only shake their heads in disbelief. It wasn't just the fans who were struggling to keep up. Her opponents, seasoned professionals in their own right, were clearly left scratching their heads, trying to figure out how to contain this new threat. But Clark, for her part, seemed to be having the time of her life, playing as if the rules of basketball had bent themselves to her will. In the locker room before the game, Clark had reportedly told her new teammates, "Just play your game, I'll fit in." While this might sound modest, it's anything but. She wasn't there to take over and shove her style of play down everyone's throat. She knew her approach would naturally mesh with theirs. But once the game began, it was clear she wasn't just fitting in. She was reshaping the team's play in real time, like adding hot sauce to a dish that was already pretty spicy to begin with. Her teammates seemed to feed off her energy. You could see it in the way they hustled for loose balls and the extra pep in their step when setting screens for her. Back in the WNBA circles, there was almost an unspoken rivalry about how Caitlin Clark's game would translate overseas. Some critics had downplayed her move, suggesting that the more physical and defense-heavy European style might stifle her usual freedom. But Clark silenced those doubters quickly. She didn't just rise to the challenge, she bulldozed right through it. And she did it all with that signature calmness. There were no unnecessary theatrics or chest-thumping displays. She didn't need them. Her grin after nailing a deep three-pointer and her casual head nod to the crowd said it all. The European League's crowd was a mixed bag, seasoned locals, basketball purists, and curious onlookers wanting to see the hike firsthand. As Clark's shooting performance began to climb, something happened that rarely occurs in sports venues, a noticeable shift in allegiance. Fans who had arrived decked out in opposing colors found themselves involuntarily nodding in approval, muttering, "Okay, this kid's the real deal." By halftime, even the most ardent skeptics had started enjoying the show. For Caitlin, the game seemed almost like a playground, except the stakes were sky-high, and the audience stretched from Lisbon to Los Angeles. And maybe that's what makes her so captivating to watch. There's an element of joy in her style of play that draws you in. She didn't seem weighed down by the magnitude of the moment. If anything, she seemed to draw power from it. You could almost imagine her narrating the action in her head. Let's hit them with this step-back three here, or, yeah, I'm going to no-look this one. There's a spontaneity to her game that feels unscripted, like she's painting in broad strokes rather than sticking to a precise blueprint. Of course, any great performance comes with its hiccups, and Clark wasn't without a few. There were moments when she got a bit too flashy or tried to force a pass that wasn't there. But even those mistakes seemed to earn her some respect. It was a reminder that she's not a machine, just a ridiculously talented player figuring things out in real time. When her coach gestured to slow things down after one risky play, Clark sheepishly threw up a hand in acknowledgement, as if to say, "My bad, got carried away." And the crowd laughed, not with ridicule, but with that kind of admiration you reserve for someone who's good at what they do, but isn't afraid to show they're human too. For WNBA fans watching from home, this was a turning point. Caitlin Clark wasn't just a domestic talent anymore. She was proving that she could cross borders and still be a dominant force. The commentators dissecting her debut on TV didn't need to reach for comparisons or excessive praise. The proof was in the game itself. Clark's skill set wasn't just traveling well. It was setting up camp and making itself at home. The ripple effects of her performance stretched beyond the hardwood. On social media, fans and analysts began debating. What does this mean for the future of international talent crossover? Is Clark going to spark a new wave of young WNBA stars taking their talents abroad? The possibilities were endless, and suddenly everyone wanted a piece of the Caitlin Clark story. From a purely basketball standpoint, the implications were significant. Here was a player who was already reshaping the way people viewed the women's game in the States, now threatening to do the same in Europe. Her success wasn't just her own. It became a shared victory for those who had been advocating for women's basketball to receive the recognition it deserved. Back in the arena, as the game wore on and Clark continued to pile up points and assists, there was a sense that something big was happening. The fans seemed to understand that they weren't just watching a game. They were witnessing a shift. It wasn't just Caitlin Clark adjusting to European basketball. The league itself seemed to be adjusting to Caitlin Clark. There was a fluidity in the way her team played now, a sense of freedom that hadn't been there before. And it wasn't forced or artificial, it was organic, stemming from the simple fact that Clark's style encouraged her teammates to play looser, with more creativity. The final buzzer sounded, and the stadium erupted. The standing ovation wasn't just a polite gesture. It was a recognition of what everyone had just seen. Clark waved to the crowd, offering a brief, almost humble salute. She wasn't the type to soak in the moment too long. There were more games to play, more challenges to tackle. As she made her way back to the locker room, she gave a brief, cheeky grin to one of her teammates, almost as if to say, "Well, that was fun." Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more engaging content. We thrive on your feedback, so be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments section below. Until next time, keep discovering and stay tuned.